People aren't really talking about Alabama State. And I think I know the reason why, but I'm here to tell you we need to throw that reason out the window. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, I'm Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire and site expert at Who Dat Dish. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, everydayers, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me. Follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. We wrap up today's episode with a look at Darrien Roberts, who has moved from the Morgan State wrestling team to being a coach at another university, and this is big time for the upstart wrestling program. In segment 2, I'm going to explain to you why you should still be on the Alabama State hype train, why you should still at least keep an eye out for the Hornets. I even feel the need to make this declaration because I know the reason you aren't looking for them. That's segment 1. I know the reason that people aren't really excited. I know the reason why people aren't on the hype train. I know the reason why people aren't even talking about the Alabama State Hornets. And to a degree, I get it. They're fatigued. This is an assumption, but I feel like people are tired of saying this could be the year for Alabama State. There are a multitude of reasons. I think Jackson State's existence is a reason on why people aren't talking about Alabama State, but I can't blame it completely on that because there's other schools in the SWAC, not just in the SWAC East, that I feel like are being discussed. Alabama State is being talked about at the same level as a team that's going to finish bottom 2 in the division. They're being discussed the same amount as a team that may only beat Valley. Like that's how they're being discussed right now. And when I say how, I really mean the frequency. No one's even talking about what they've done, who they've added, what the outlook for the season is. I'm not here to tell you that they'll be world beaters. I'm not here to do that. But I do think that we should talk about them a little bit more than we have. The reason I think fatigue has set in is because this would now be probably 3 years in a row that we've said, hey, watch out for Alabama State. I feel like that's been the case. Maybe 4. Like this may be going on 4 seasons that we've said that. It feels like ever since Eddie Robinson's second year, there's been a, hey, watch out for him. But I begin this streak at the year that Jackson State or the year that Deion Sanders left Jackson State. I feel like it was at that time people were searching for a new king. People were searching for who's going to usurp Jackson State. And it ended up being Florida A&M. And I think that was the favorite to do it. But it was kind of a, this could be the year for Alabama State. It felt like the first time that we felt like they were warming up to being true contenders. All right, it didn't happen. That's fine. Because that was the first year you really expected it. Really, truly. So let's just start it there. 2023. Let's start at 2023. 2023 was the first year you actually had expectations for the Hornets. Then 2024 rolls around and the expectations shoot through the roof. Jackson State was coming off of a meh season. Florida A&M had just lost Willie Simmons. The SWAC was for the taking. So now I come back this year. In Alabama State, I once again say you need to look out for them. You just need to pay attention. Let's at least talk about them. Let's talk about who they got in the transfer portal. Let's talk about who they have returning. And we will do those things at a later date. At a later date, we will continue to break down teams as we get closer to the regular season. We will continue to have those conversations. But right now, I'm trying to explain where the fatigue comes from. There are only so many times in which you can tell me this is going to be your year. It's only so many times you can say that. Hey man, they might be a force to be reckoned with. And it feels like every year they're relatively disappointing. It feels like every year the record is disappointing in comparison to preseason expectations. It just feels like, oh, we thought y'all was going to be championship contenders, and you've never been one game away. I think that's the thing that makes people a little bit more fatigued, because I can't keep hopping on this hype train if every time I hop on this hype train, you turn around and make me look crazy. That's the fatigue. And listen, when I say Jackson State exists, of course, there's a component of this that says Jackson State is the clear-cut favorite in the SWAC. There's a part of this that says Jackson State is just better than everybody else. Why talk about anybody else? I could get down with that, except I hear people talk about Alabama A&M. I'm not saying they do it a lot, but I've at least heard them discuss it. And of course, Sam Shade being there, you get Mekhi Hagans. There's a level of excitement that comes with the newness around the Bulldogs. I get that. And to a degree, not even to a degree, I'm more excited, more interested to see what Alabama A&M does. I really am. I'm interested in that. But at the same time, I'm interested in Alabama State, because my biggest apprehension is also the cause of my biggest intrigue. And that is the fact that they've lost core, critical members of their defensive coaching staff. That's the bread and butter when you think about the Hornets. It's the ability to play defense. You're losing it. You're losing it, right? You lost your defensive coordinator. You lost your defensive backs coach. And I know losing a positional coach a lot of times can feel like a very easy thing to make up for. Not in this case. James Williams has been one of the best defensive backs coach that you'll see out. Point blank period. It's not even a question. His ability and the reputation of Alabama State to develop defensive backs all goes back to him. I think that he is a future head coach at some point, and he's moving up the ranks. Shout out to Coach James. But you're losing a defensive coordinator who we all understand the impact of that. But you're losing a defensive backs coach, and that's your backbone of your defense. That's the backbone of your defense. So there are reasons to be concerned. There are reasons to say, I don't know. I don't know if they can do it. We've seen them over and over get the hype. I can't keep getting behind somebody that lets me down. I've seen the defense be dominant for years and never have the offense catch up. My thing is, last year, you didn't have the chance to let the offense catch up. You realize that I think the starting quarterback with the most starts was a wide receiver turned QB. And it definitely wasn't your first or second string. You played the entirety of the season outside of game one with a third string or lower quarterback. Sometimes we have to use context and ask ourselves, how are we coming to these conclusions? If we're tired of hopping on the Bama State hype train, at least let them disappoint us with everything at their disposal. See, like D. Davis, he just wasn't good enough. I get it. Get off that hype train. He just wasn't good enough at Alabama State. And he showed you what he had. It wasn't like, well, he was dealing with a nagging ankle, knee, and quad injury in his whole right leg, so he wasn't able to do this. It wasn't that. He just wasn't good enough at Alabama State. But when you look at Bama State's 2024 season, if you're feeling like they got your hopes up for nothing, well, that's also because they got injured. And if you can go to any school, go to Jackson State. Well, Jackson State may be the one where you can get away with it because they had so many quarterbacks last year, but they probably won't have that this year. They won't have a Jacoby and Morgan, Cam McCoy, and Zy McDonald in the room. So that's a little bit different. But for the most part, you take any team and put them on their third string quarterback from week one. Then maybe go down to fourth string and then say, all right, we got to take the wide receiver who used to play quarterback in high school, make him your quarterback now. You take any team under those circumstances and they'll probably underperform unless you already thought that they were going to win no games. So basically anybody other than Valley would be an underperformer underneath those circumstances. But I'm going to tell you why You should stay on the hype train. You should still believe. I am not predicting what I predicted last year, but I am predicting that this is a team that is worth being invested in and interested in as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. It's been a while since I've been to a Rangers game, and I'm thinking about changing that. If you haven't been to a baseball game recently, or maybe you just haven't used Game Time, it doesn't have to be for a baseball game. It could be for I was about to say hockey game, but they're out too. Ballet, it could be for theater, it could be for a concert, it could be for a comedy show, it could be for anything that requires tickets. Maybe you just haven't used Game Time. Go there, download the app, or go to the website. Create an account, doesn't matter. Create an account and use the code Locked On College. You get $20 off your first purchase. I'd recommend it to anybody. Go have a good time in whatever city that you're in and whatever they do in your city. In order to do that at the best price, not only with the $20 off, but the flash deals, everything in between, make sure you go to Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day for your second listen. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL. It's almost that time. It's almost training camp, which means it's almost the season. I almost count training camp as not being the off season anymore, to be honest. But it's time, guys. So make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL to be prepared for everything around your favorite team and opponents. We talked about why people aren't excited about Alabama State, but this is the reason that you should be. Your fatigue argument is flawed, and I'm going to make an argument on why fatigue is flawed, not only on Alabama State as a team, but as Andrew Body as a leader. Let's get into Body. Y'all know how I feel about the talent of Andrew Body. Y'all know the way that I feel. Let's be real. I popped out here last year and said that Alabama State was the team to beat. I won't say that this year. Not because I'm hedging my bets. It's mostly because I think Jackson State is just that good. And I think they're back, and I like TC Taylor a lot. So I won't hop out here and say that Alabama State is the team to beat. But what I will say, you can't say I was wrong last year because we never really saw the Alabama State that we thought we were going to. Andrew Body doesn't get hurt in the first game of the season, who knows what they end up being. And I think that the way people speak about Body is, I just think it's incorrect. I think it's built, I think it's flawed. Like I said, the fatigue argument is flawed because the fatigue that is surrounding Alabama State, in my opinion, also surrounds Andrew Body as a player. He is the perfect embodiment, no pun intended, but Andrew Body is the perfect embodiment of Alabama State in the terms of how people outside of Montgomery tend to look at the school and tend to look at the player. People are just fatigued and feel like they've gotten their hopes up multiple times and never had that delivered on. I told you why I believe that's flawed when it comes to the school, but let me tell you why it's flawed when it comes to Andrew Body. Andrew Body at the end of the 2022 season is when the hype train hit full speed and people say, hey, we really want to see what he can be. We really think he has the talent to be a talented quarterback or be one of the better quarterbacks in this conference. Since then, Body's played 2 games. 2 games. Now, if people want to sit here and say he's injury prone, I don't believe that either, but it's a better argument than what I normally hear. The reason I don't think he's necessarily injury prone is because it was an injury that he tried to rehab without surgery, immediately re-aggravated it week 1, had to get surgery, comes back the next year, re-aggravates that same injury, but it turns out that they didn't do the surgery well the first time. There was flaws in the original procedure. I think that you're just re-aggravating the same injury and kind of took the wrong approach the first time. You should have just got surgery instead of trying to do rehab, but nobody wants to go under the knife. So I can't really fault the decision-making there. I don't consider that injury prone. I consider that an injury that was recurring, but you went to Dr. Andrews, who is universally known for working on shoulders. Like, as a Saints fan, he worked on Drew Brees' shoulder. It was like nothing ever happened. So when it comes to shoulder surgeries and shoulder procedures, I think that Body went to the right person. And he went to a person that has me with full confidence that he'll bounce back. And I'm hearing great things about where Body is physically right now. But my thing is, when people talk about Body, and if you don't feel the same way about Andrew Body as I do, that's fine. I think that I don't think it's a slam dunk. It's just something I believe in. Let's be very clear. I think Andrew Body is supremely talented. If you don't carry that same stance as I do, if you don't have the same belief, I'm okay with that because I don't think it's undeniable. I think that you can make the argument. I prefer the injury argument versus the he just won't make it argument, though. Unfortunately, people always say, well, he just can't hit that spot. He just can't hit that ceiling. He just isn't, he'll never reach that point. Where are you getting that from, though? Like, that's my thing. Where are we getting that from? Call me a homer. I'll own all of it, right? Like, let's call me a homer. He went to Texas Southern. You like Body? Cool. Yeah, I do like Body. I do like talent. I've never met this kid, though. Mind you, I've never met this kid in person ever in my life. It's not like we friends or we kick it or anything. So this whole personal investment, it's only so far. It's just a institutional bias, if you want to call it that. But he went to TSU, and that's when I bought it. I like him because he's talented. But let's say I'm biased and I can't take off my lenses of feeling like he was going to be the hope at TSU. I try to. At the end of the 2022 season, I think we could all agree as a general consensus the hype was warranted. Unless you never felt like the hype was warranted, that's a whole different conversation. But in 2022, when I feel like he was an injury away from leading Texas Southern to the SWAC championship game, they probably get thumped by Jackson State, but you have a SWAC West title to your name, and this is a whole different conversation if that happens. Let's not deal in hypotheticals. At the end of the 2022 season, everybody looked at Andrew Body as a quarterback who we wanted to see more from. I just still view him that way. I'm not here to tell you that he's going to be the SWAC player of the year. I think there's been too much time in between the last time I seen him for me to make that argument. What I'm here to say is, at the end of 2022, those expectations, that intrigue, all of that we had, he's only played 2 games since. First game at TSU, he had the great and the ugly. Not even just the good and the bad. It was the great and the ugly. He looked phenomenal at the beginning of that game. But as it got down to the wire, as they started walking down TSU, he had some really bad interceptions. Some really bad decisions that he made. Okay, cool. My thing is, that's good and bad. One game he never plays again. 2024, he's the best threat Alabama State has on offense, but he gets injured. He doesn't play again. So in those 2 games, what did you see to make you change your perception on Body? Because me, I saw nothing. I'm still equally as intrigued. I still want to know what's going to happen. Maybe I'm a little bit cautious on heaping praise. Maybe I'm cautious on that. But the idea that he just won't make it, I don't think is fair. I don't know what it's rooted in. They set him up as if he's a disappointment. But just like Alabama State last year, the argument is kind of slanted. If you're going to say Alabama State was a disappointment last year, I think you'd be wrong. I think Alabama State overachieved in 2024 when you look at what they had to deal with in the course of getting through the season. Now, if you just compare them to regular season expectations when we thought they'd be fully healthy, that's a different conversation. But that's not the circumstances that they set up with. So I do think it's a little bit slanted. When it comes to Body, it's treated as if he played every single game over the last 2 seasons, and we've seen he was never going to hit the level we thought he could. When did he let us down other than injuries? So with him at the helm, I still think you have a supremely talented quarterback. I still think you have one of those guys that you're going to have to deal with at any given moment. He's a dual threat quarterback. But let's move off him because it's not just about Body. That's the driving force, which is why I want to lean into that so much. Eddie Robinson. Well, how much of the defense are you responsible for? You still have an all SWAC. You have a legend on the defensive side of the ball leading your team. You lost your DC, you lost your DB coach, but could you do a little bit more? Could you do a little bit more in other areas to make up for those losses? Because you don't have to do too much because Eddie Robinson's there, right? Like maybe you just need to get you don't have a great defensive coordinator. You need to have a solid defensive coordinator. I don't know how you replace James Williams, but maybe you just have somebody who is solid. And now you lean on Eddie Robinson a little bit more. He has more experience. He could probably lean into the defensive side of the ball more than he has in years past. He was more of a helicopter coach. He could be more hands-on now. I think that ability exists. It's just about if they tap into it or not. And then lastly, they got Holtzclaw, who I liked a lot at running back, who went out for the season, but he's back. And I'm hearing that he's looking really good. I'm hearing that his bounce is there. I'm hearing that his juice is there. And they got some wide receivers that came in. But like I said, we'll talk about transfers and things of that nature in later episodes as we get closer to the regular season. But it's all about body. It is. That's why I leaned here. The reason you shouldn't be out is because I still think Andrew Body is an intriguing prospect. 2 years away from the game, essentially. We'll have to see what he can be. But he's an intriguing prospect. And I'm not telling you that they're going to be the best team in the SWAC. I did that last year. This year, I'm here to tell you that they're a team to at least watch and be interested and invested in. And it starts with the quarterback, starts with the head coach, and it trickles itself down to the other members of that team. Oh, sorry. And last thing, is the defense going to be able to stay up? And that's what I want to know. Is the defense going to be able to stay up? Because we've seen this with Morgan State, where year after year, the offense don't measure up. Eventually, the defense is going to decline. And that happened to them while they had Elijah Williams on the team. So I'll be watching. This will be very interesting to see Alabama State this year. And we'll revisit this later on. As we continue rolling, let's talk about Morgan State. That's funny. Great transition. Let's talk about Morgan State wrestling this time, because one of their former wrestlers is now an assistant coach at a different school. And I think that that's major for the program. Let's break it down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Darrien Roberts. No, not Darrion Gray. That's me, but Darrien, talking about Darrien. Darrien Roberts has stepped up, and he's taken a role at Wyoming Seminary, which is a school that he came from originally. So it's kind of a full circle thing that he's able to go coach at a school that he originally, started wrestling at. The reason I think this is so major is not because of any sort of success that he had, not about any kind of record or title or anything like that. He's an assistant coach. He's not even the head coach, right? So like all of these things that we typically talk about are not the focal point of today's segment. It's about the fact that you are creating pipelines, you are creating opportunities, and you are displaying the ability to transition, which is not something that you would normally see. When it comes to, I feel like this is more, when it comes to the case of, but when it comes to an upstart program, especially in something as small as wrestling, this is still very niche. You have to show what you can do at the college and what you can do after college, because people want to know, they want to stay in wrestling. Well, where do they go after that? And you going from Morgan State on the mat to going to Wyoming Seminary as a coach, it shows that you can put your athletes in positions to succeed after college, because what you do in school is important. And I'd say it's only, maybe a couple of feet, if we're talking about race, a couple of feet ahead of, well, what can you do after school? So it's a very close race, in my opinion. It's a photo finish. Let me not even say a couple of feet. It's a photo finish. But when you're talking about wrestling and it's like, okay, are you going to go to the Olympics? Maybe not. Everybody can't go to the Olympics. There's so many wrestling programs out here. Mad of them don't put athletes into the Olympics. So I'm not expecting that from Morgan State. And I don't think most people are expecting that from Morgan State. That's a bonus. That'll make people want to go to the school. But if you can show, all right, well, Morgan State, they put together 3-4 coaches around the country. And now this program that's only been around for a couple of seasons already has 2-3 coaches around the country. It's not about recruiting people to Morgan State. It's about showing that you can succeed after you've been at Morgan State. You could also go the high school route, where high school athletes or high school coaches, they mentor athletes, and maybe they could send theirs to Morgan State. That's another way to do it. But I think this is a situation where good work sells itself. I think that this is a situation where people see what you're doing. People see the product or the result of the product, and then they say, all right, I want to come be a part of that. That's my personal opinion on that. I think that Darrien Roberts has a great opportunity here. I'm rooting for him. I think that Morgan State wrestling is something that I wish I could get more into more frequently, but I just never seem to catch it on my radar when it's going on. But this is big. This is big. It's a big movement they got going on. It's very supported. I think that if we can get something like this at Wilberforce, where the first set of recruits go through and somebody ends up going to be a gymnastics coach elsewhere and not just on the high school level, that works. But if we're talking about on the college level, where people tend to treat it a little differently, as far as, oh, okay, this is a big move for you. You were able to go into the collegiate ranks. I feel like some people write off high school coaching. They shouldn't, but I feel like they do, especially when it's like fresh out of college. Well, they just know you over there. But anyway, I think that if we can continue this with Wilberforce in their gymnastics program, Morgan State in their wrestling program, Delaware State in their wrestling program, if we can continue these type of transitions into coaching and showing that life after the mat is still very, very successful and it's a good pipeline, this is a win for all of us. Now, I'll be back on Monday. I'm recording this super early, so I don't know what we're going to talk about. I don't know what we're going to talk about on Monday, but we'll be back with it. So I can't wait. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.